In.
Liang Sicheng's father was Liang Qichao, a famous thinker, political activist and writer, and also one of the founding fathers of modern Chinese journalism. Liang Sicheng was born in Japan in 1901, just a few years after China's brief reform movement of 1898. Liang Qichao, as a prominent supporter of the reforms, had been forced into exile after the movement collapsed. This photograph gives no indication of Liang Qichao's commanding public presence. All it reveals is the tenderness of a loving father. Lin Huiyin was 3 years younger than Liang Sicheng. She was born in Hangzhou in 1904 to a family that came originally from Fujian province. Her father, Lin Changmin, like Liang Qichao, was active in politics, and he too was a kind and affectionate father. Describing a photograph he took of Huiyin and her cousins, Lin Changmin wrote, "Huiyin was wearing a white blouse and black trousers and was holding her cousin's hand. They look in the picture like dear friends, but in fact, they constantly fought over sweets and other trivial matters. I was always having to mediate in their disputes." Lin Huiyin saw little of her father while she was growing up. When she was 2, he went to study politics at Waseda University in Japan. Unlike his cousins Lin Juemin and Lin Yinmin, who were among the 72 martyrs of the Huanghuagang uprising of 1911, Lin Changmin's approach to revolution was to promote the founding of a constitutional government by political means. In Liang Qichao, he found someone who shared his political views, and the two men became firm friends. Liang Sicheng spent his early years in Japan. In 1907, when he was 7, his family moved to Kobe, where they lived in a seaside villa with some other Chinese families. Behind their house, there was a pine forest, so all day and night the family could hear the crashing of waves from one side and the rustling of leaves from the other. For a child, the environment was idyllic. Lin Huiyin, by contrast, did not enjoy so much sunshine and natural beauty or happiness in her childhood. This was reflected in her father's letters to her, which she kept along with his diary. "I received your 2 letters and they filled me with joy. Your studies are progressing well and you're well behaved, which makes me love you all the more." Huiyin was a gifted child and her father loved her deeply. However, his wife was unable to produce a son, and when Huiyin was 8, he married again. His second wife gave him a daughter and 4 sons. Huiyin's mother's fall from favor cast a shadow over the family that would deeply affect Huiyin. In 1909, Lin Changmin returned to China, and 2 years later the revolution of 1911 broke out. As an expert on parliamentary procedures, Lin Changmin was appointed General Secretary of the new provisional legislature. "I cannot be at home right now. If you could take care of everything, I would be very grateful." Lin Changmin was kept busy helping to write the constitution of the new republic. Huiyin got to see him only for brief periods. In 1912, Liang Qichao returned to China after 13 years in exile. A fresh breeze was blowing throughout the country, and the society was undergoing rapid change. Liang Qichao and Lin Changmin were both steeped in traditional Chinese culture, but they had also lived abroad and embraced Western learning. In helping to establish a constitutional government in China, they wanted to cultivate a new generation of Chinese scholars who could blend Chinese and Western thinking. In 1915, at the age of just 14, Liang Sicheng went to study at Tsinghua Academy. His fellow students included Wen Yiduo, Liang Shiqiu, Wang Zi, and Sun Liren, who would go on to play prominent roles in the political, academic, and military fields. The Academy Yearbook for 1923 reveals that Liang Sicheng was a very active student. He played a major role in the Academy's musical life and was the artistic director of the 1923 yearbook. His classmates referred to him as an artist with a politician's mind and a master statesman with romantic leanings. When Liang Sicheng reached the second year at Tsinghua Academy, Lin Huiyin, who was by then 12, entered Peking Peihua Girls' High School. The school, established by British missionaries, trained its students to be young ladies. Outside the school walls, momentous events were taking place. The warlord Yuan Shikai declared himself emperor, and later there was even an attempt to restore the Qing dynasty. Liang Qichao on both occasions stood up in defense of the new republic. On May 4, 1919, student demonstrations broke out that would have repercussions across China and around the world. Among the chief protagonists were Liang Qichao and Lin Changmin, the fathers of Liang Sicheng and Lin Huiyin. World War I had ended in November of the previous year, and Liang Qichao went to Europe to attend the Paris Peace Conference. His chief concern was to ensure that the German concession in Shandong province was returned to China. Unbeknown to him, however, the Chinese government delegation had already signed a secret treaty with Japan, granting it privileges in Shandong. Bitterly disappointed, Liang Qichao sent frantic cables back to Beijing, including some to Lin Changmin, who was a member of the Foreign Affairs Council. It was a desperate attempt to stop China signing the treaty. On May 2, 1919, Lin Changmin published an article in the Beijing newspaper Chen Bao under the headline, Notice to the Public, Foreign Affairs Alert. 2 days later, on May 4th, 3,000 students took to Beijing streets. Lin Huiyin was still in high school, but on that day the course of her life would change. Lin Changmin, having lit the fire, resigned from his position on the Foreign Affairs Council. Appointed instead as an observer to the League of Nations, the following year he left for Europe, taking his 16-year-old daughter Huiyin with him. I brought you with me on my foreign travels for several reasons. First, you can learn a lot by observing the affairs of state. Second, being near me, you can realize how much I love you. Third, you can escape the trivialities of our home life and broaden your horizons so that in the future you will have the vision and ability to improve society. In Europe, Huiyin served as her father's translator and secretary. Lin Changmin realized that he was blessed to have such a brilliant daughter. He went so far as to declare that he had set aside his claim to parental authority and would try to treat her instead as a friend. In London, Lin Huiyin studied at St. Mary's College. Her father was a gifted writer, and he often received visitors. One of them was Xu Zhimao, who had recently arrived from Columbia University in the United States, where he had been earning his master's degree in economics. Xu was committed to the cause of national salvation, and before going abroad, he'd written an essay making clear his aspirations. The country is racked by turmoil, and a few men alone cannot stand firm and inspire the people. People of like mind must gather together, swear allegiance to the cause, and eliminate abuses in a display of great moral courage. For Xu Zhimao, living abroad had exposed him to an intellectual environment that was more fertile than he had been used to, and he felt caught in a clash of ideas. Eventually, he became a follower of the great Western philosophers Nietzsche and Russell. In 1920, at the age of 24, He abandoned his PhD studies at Columbia and travelled to London to seek out Bertrand Russell, who at the time was a professor at Cambridge University. Meanwhile, Xu's wife, a young woman whom he had wed in an arranged marriage, had recently given birth to their son, but in London, Xu fell passionately in love with Huiyin.